If you are the CEO, are you watching your people to see if they're getting bored or tired or burnt out? And are you jumping off the sled to run with the team if they need that extra push? And I just thought, this is brilliant.
Welcome to the My Future Business Show, where we get you in front of your best audience and keep you there. Not only are we interviewing the biggest names in business to help you become even more successful, we're inviting you to book your spot on the show to help you grow your business. So at the end of the call, make sure you fill in the interview application form at myfuturebusiness.com/interviews. Hi, and welcome back to the My Future Business Show. It's Rick Nuske here. I hope you're doing wonderfully well, no matter where you are. Now, listen, just before we go on, I'd just like to say thank you so very much for your feedback. It's warm, it's wonderful, it's uplifting, and it's inspiring. It's very humbling. Thank you so much. Now, on today's show, I'm on the line with the wonderful Val Jones. How are you, Val?
I'm great, Rick. Thanks for having me on your show. I appreciate it.
That's absolutely my pleasure, Val. Now, listen, everybody's on the call today. Val has an amazing story. Now, if you were to visit her website, there is something on there that gives away a bit of insight to her background. But before we go deep diving into what you're going to find there, I'd love for you, Val, if you could, to share a little bit about yourself with the My Future Business audience.
I live in Denver, Colorado. We love it here. I have been married for 26 years and we have 2 offspring that I love dearly when they are not around me. And I have been a CrossFit instructor for 13 years, and the last 2 years I have transitioned into being a full-time speaker and a peak performance coach.
Fantastic. And now I read your bio, Val, and it's an incredible story of trials and tribulations and some counterintuitive things that you know about that hopefully we can talk about on the show. Let's go back a handful of years, because when I look at this and some of the names that I've seen on this bio, I had to do a double take. Let's talk about those. We're talking about people like Kristi Yamaguchi, Tonya Harding, and Nancy Kerrigan. Wow, they are huge names. I wonder if we could talk about that for a little while.
Absolutely. I'd like to remind your audience, I always feel like that comes across so bragful or stuck up, but
Not at all.
It ain't bragging if it's true.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, yes, I was a competitive figure skater from the time that I was 5 years old. And I had the privilege of sharing the ice and the podium with those girls. And I just feel like, Rick, like I just led this blessed life.
Yes.
Even though it didn't turn out the way that I was hoping it to.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, can I go back, I guess, a little bit further to that?
Absolutely.
You had some health issues that came up. And I guess for a bit of perspective for the audience, Val, could we talk a little bit about that and see where it led you?
Absolutely. Well, nobody told me, Rick, when I was 5 that ice was hard, and that all of those doubles and triple jumps that I did repeatedly, hour after hour, day after day, week after week, would one day have consequences. And my joke is I have a unique collection, and my collection is I collect orthopedic surgeries.
On the shelf.
I'm slowly being replaced and have many bionic parts. And so I've had 5 consecutive surgeries in 5 years, 4 of them orthopedic, 1 of them not. And on the last one, I contracted a complication, which is actually somewhat common, called MRSA, and it's a staph infection that is not curable by normal antibiotics.
Right.
Meaning, most people who have MRSA are quarantined because it's so highly contagious, like worse than COVID-19, and they have to have intravenous IV drugs.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess my competitive spirit kicked in because I contracted not only 1 strain of MRSA, but I contracted 2.
Oh, just invite everybody to the party.
Yeah, my infectious disease doctor said that he had never treated a patient with multiple strains of MRSA at the same time, not ever in his 25 years
Wow.
of practice. And so I had to have a port put in, like a chemo port,
Hmm.
and have these IV drugs put in. And much like chemo is to cancer, the cure for MRSA is similar in the fact that it'll either kill you or it'll kill the MRSA.
Yep.
And
Yep.
it tried to kill me, but thankfully I came out on the other side. So one of the complications of one of the meds was, if I pushed it in all at once, the whole needle all at once, it would cause immediate cardiac arrest.
Wow.
And then the other one caused kidney failure. And unfortunately, on day 27 of my protocol, I went into kidney failure. And, but I was able to have the best medical care, and thankfully come out on the other side so I could be here with you today.
Goodness me. Look, that is a very deep story, and I know that must be very impactful for you to share that. So thank you so very much. Now, you talked a little bit about earlier about your competitive nature, and I'd love to, given your background, your amazing background, I'd love to deep dive into that, Val, because I think it's quite relevant to where you are today and what you're doing today.
Yeah, awesome. So I'm the youngest of seven.
Hmm.
So I'm not sure if it's nature or nurture. I kind of was, when you're the youngest of seven, we were all very competitive. All of us played sports, which is incredible that my parents were able to run from this ball field to this ball field to the ice rink. I think my parents probably just spent most of their time driving us kids to our practices. But it went, a step further than that.
Yes.
It was, who could run to the car the fastest, or who could make the stupidest face at the dinner table. And let's be clear, my dad usually won that one. So, um, so I've always been competitive, and to the point of being in that hospital, um, with the MRSA and the kidneys failing. Um, there's a certain fight that I think my upbringing and my competitive skating has instilled in me. I mean, I really think that who I am today was built and formed on at 5 o'clock in the morning on that freezing cold ice. You have to fight. And I don't know. I don't know, Rick, if that's the age old question, right? Is it something that can be taught, or is it something that you have in you?
Absolutely.
Um, I heard once that fear and panic can be trained out. It doesn't go easy, but it can be trained out. And I think I pulled on all of those lessons that I learned over the years and tried not to have fear and panic, thinking that if my kidneys don't kick in, I'm going to die. And so literally, I was in the fight for my life. And I
Yes.
pulled upon every competitive ounce that was in my body, because when my doctors over the years and over those surgeries told me that I couldn't do something or I can't do something, I guess maybe I'm a bratty child on the inside, because that's like a throw down challenge to
That's
me.
a
And
trigger, isn't it?
I've always accepted that challenge and rose to the occasion.
Yeah, I think what's important here is for the My Future Business audience to take away um, some really deep insights into not only life but to business and mindset. Now, you've talked about 5 a.m. starts, and you would do that quite regularly for years on end, I suspect, Val. How is that, I guess, that perseverance, those routines, positively affected you in what you're doing today with the people that you work with?
Well, I think it's really set a precedence um, of perseverance, of persistence, of setting a goal and coming up with a plan of attack to achieve that goal.
Yeah.
And how to pivot when things don't go wrong. And I think that screams for what we are in, not as a country, not as a nation, but as a world with this coronavirus.
Mm-hmm.
If things aren't going your way, you have to learn how to pivot
Yeah.
and try something new. And so, in a business sense, all of my skating, all of my training has led me literally to this moment right here with you.
Mm-hmm.
It's about I want your audience to understand that there is a huge difference between quitting and redirecting your energy into something else. And
Absolutely.
so, in a very real business sense, right now with this, I'm a speaker.
Yeah.
I can't keynote at a conference that isn't being held. So I'm not quitting. I am redirecting my energies into something else. And so I want to be clear that your listeners understand the difference
Yep.
and learning how to pivot and learning how to, and this came into play with all my surgeries. I think it's pivotal in this current market. And I learned this from all of my surgeries about how to rehab, recover, retrain.
Uh-huh. Yep.
And there's going to be a certain amount of healing that our world will have to do. And it was just like all those orthopedic surgeries, Rick. There
Yep.
was a certain amount of healing that had to happen before I could step into the recover and retrain into something else. And so I find the parallels of that to be so amazing. And
Yes.
I feel so blessed.
Yes. Now, I think the My Future Business audience is blessed to have you on the show with us today, Val. Through your trials and tribulations, you've come out the other side very much a stronger individual for that. Now, one of the things that your bio talks about is leadership. And when you're doing your keynotes, you're obviously talking about leadership. But what struck me about your bio is the counterintuitive nature of what you're about to share with the My Future Business audience. I've never heard anything like this, and I think this is going to be very fascinating for our audience. Would you mind sharing a little bit about, in fact, a lot, as much as you can, about the difference between leading from the front, but the best leaders are leading from the back, and where you learnt that?
I would love to. I would love to. I have been to many corporate trainings and many conferences, personal development, where collegiate athletes, Olympic athletes,
Mm-hmm.
political powers that be that always talk about leading from the front. And yes, you're right. It is counterintuitive. My approach is leading from the back. And where I learned that from was my husband and I were up in Canada and we went on a dog sledding trip. And for your audience, if you haven't done that, Rick, oh my gosh, it's an amazing
Oh,
experience.
I've not done that. It sounds amazing.
I would definitely encourage it. These dogs are so smart and so well trained. I can't even get my dogs to walk in a straight line.
Me
These,
neither.
yeah, these dogs are amazing. And the lead mesher, he went on to explain how first of all, he gets to know each one of his dogs individually. He gets to know their strengths and their weaknesses. And it made me think about, people in leadership. Are you doing that? Are you really getting to know your person as an individual?
Yeah.
He then went on to explain to us that there is a very specific, succinct way that he places his dogs on the lead and in the order that he does. And he went on and he says, okay, so the first two dogs, your lead dogs, those ones are the smartest. They kind of are accepting of being told where to go, and they
Mm-hmm.
know the path and they know the trail, and they're your leaders. You want them in the front.
Yeah.
He says the two middle dogs are what are called swing dogs. And these dogs set the pace for the team. So they're not the strongest, they're not the leaders, but they keep the pace. They keep everybody on track. And then here's where I thought it's genius and I'm going to learn. I can't believe I'm basing my business theory off of dogs, but here we go. He puts the very last two dogs, the ones closest to the sled, are his strongest dogs. And so it got me thinking about, if you are in a leadership position,
Hmm.
regardless of who you are or what you do, who is your team? Who are your strongest dogs? Who are your pace dogs, and who are your leader dogs? And do you have them set up in that way so that the whole entire team can succeed?
Yes, yes.
And so that in that sense, you are leading from the back.
The back, isn't that so counterintuitive?
It is.
So
It is.
when you talk to clients about this structure, what is their typical reaction to that, and what happens from there?
I get a similar I get a similar response that you did. Well, I've never heard of that. That doesn't seem like it would make sense. But then as I explain it to them, they're
Hmm.
like, wow, have we gotten it wrong this whole time?
Yes,
Maybe, if you're the CEO, maybe you shouldn't be the one out front. Maybe you should be getting in the back of the
and doing the encouraging, I guess, from the back, and letting your troops, I guess, grow and move forward at the front. Is that how
yeah.
this works?
It does. And actually, I'm about to blow your mind right here. You want to know the greatest of all story about this story is the musher.
The
So let's
musher.
just say the musher is the CEO. Okay. The CEO, AKA the musher, he keeps an eye on all of his dogs to see if they are getting bored, if they are getting tired, if they are getting injured. And then he moves them around in those six positions
Hmm.
accordingly to
Hmm.
what that dog needs at that time. And the best is sometimes the musher has to jump off the stands and run with the sled to get it going. Boom.
Wow.
If you are the CEO, are you watching your people to see if they're getting bored or tired or burnt out? And are you jumping off the sled to run with the team if they need that extra push? And I just thought, this is brilliant.
Yes.
We should all just be dogs.
Oh, I love dogs. Yeah, it's a wonderful analogy, and it takes a very unique twist on this idea of leadership, because we often associate leadership with a static person at the front, like we've just talked about. But you've tipped this
Yeah.
plate upside down. You've said, no, this is not actually how it necessarily works. And how have some of your clients responded to this, and how have you seen it transform their businesses?
Oh, it's completely different.
Hmm.
When you enable and you empower your people to be that lead dog or the pace dog or the strength dog, and you let them go and you let them unleash, see what I did there? And let them
Yeah.
unleash their power, it totally transforms your organization.
Absolutely.
It totally transforms. It transforms the organization. It transforms the way the team relates to it. I have had super positive. I haven't had anything but positive
Hmm.
experiences when I've enacted this with my clients.
Yes, fantastic. Now, do you, with your speaking, I'd like to talk a little bit more about that. When you're doing your talk, what is I guess, the typical structure of your talk? Do you go uh, back into your history? And I think this is a relevant conversation to have, Val, because the My Future Business audience are up and coming speakers. They want to do what you're doing. I was wondering if we could talk a little bit more about, how a typical talk goes for you.
Well, it depends on who's on the other side of me, right? So a keynote to a bunch of C-suite executives is going to look very different from a keynote for a Christian women's organization,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
So I tailor my talks as to who is on the other side of me and how I can help them solve their pain or solve their problem. There are some continual themes
Hmm.
in my keynotes about overcoming obstacles. Obviously, that's a huge one for me.
Hmm.
about how having a positive attitude um, is critical when you find yourself, in the valley, but you want to be on the mountaintop, and
Yes.
how that can play out. And the power of deciding that you do have control over yourself, over your work ethic, and controlling the things that you can control, and the things that you can't control. And it's very, very difficult, but you have to let it go.
Yeah.
You have to
Absolutely.
let it go. So there are some very strong themes in my speech, but I do tailor it to who's on the other side of me.
Fantastic feedback. Thank you so very much for sharing. Now,
Mhm.
do you use your story when you're on the stage? Do you share a lot about your Olympic background?
I do.
Hmm.
I do, because that's a space that
It's an elite
not
space.
it is an elite space, and it's not a space that many people occupy.
No.
And I think it's a great first of all, I think it's a great story.
Oh,
Of course I'm
absolutely.
biased,
Yeah, I'm
but
amazed.
there's so many points of performance that I've able to learn from that,
Hmm.
that I want to share and hopefully help others grow and succeed.
Yes, thank you. I wonder, with your speaking engagements and everything that's going on in our world today, are many people now shifting towards the online space and getting you to speak virtually?
We're working on that. Yeah. So I've
Fantastic.
had a couple of conferences that had to cancel, and we're going to, they weren't canceled. I shouldn't say canceled. They weren't canceled. They were rescheduled, and we're going to go virtual. So we will
Fantastic.
see. That's that pivoting that I talked about. You
Yeah,
just got
absolutely.
not quit, just redirect energy.
Now, if there was anybody on this world of ours that could talk to, having mind strength and physical strength combined, given the current climate and the fact that many of us can't really do too much, how does your typical day look like for you to stay right in the mind and in the body? What are you doing in a typical day?
Well, my past has definitely developed who I am today. I was always on the ice by 5:30. I did this at this time. I did this at this time. And
Hmm.
that's just who my habits have become my identity.
Yeah.
And so I am the type of person, I get up at the same time every day. I get my workout in. I meal prep. I have certain time for email. I have certain time for, writing. I have certain times of blocks of times for other things. So I have been very regimented like that my entire life.
Hmm.
And so um, all of this that is happening in our world, it hasn't necessarily changed any of that.
At
I
all.
still
Yeah.
do what I want to do, because I know that habits performed daily is what eventually makes you successful.
Yes, this is gold feedback for everybody who's on the call today. Now, Val, we're trying to educate those who are on the call today. Your experience as a speaker sometimes can be filled with fear. You've obviously have a high level of confidence and exposure to very stressful environments. What would you say to an individual coming up, wanting to do what you're doing, getting on the stage and speaking in front of people, but they're too scared to do that? What would you say to them?
I would reiterate, it's a concept that Ryan Holiday, in his book, The Obstacle is the Way, and he said, fear and panic can be trained out.
Hmm.
It doesn't go easy, but it can be trained out. And my advice to them would be just to start talking. Start talking to whoever will listen to you, and keep doing it over and over and over. That mental toughness capacity is much like a muscle. You have to develop it. You
Yeah.
have to use it. You have to put your reps in. So I would say start talking to anybody who will listen until the fear and panic can and will be trained out.
It'll
Talk
subside
to,
over. So it'll subside over time, right?
I believe so.
Fantastic. Because I find the main thread that comes through is that that fear of public speaking and getting up there, but you're never going to know unless you do it.
Exactly. and it is a muscle. You have to train it.
Absolutely. Now, when people want to engage with you, what is the process that you would take them through, when you've never met somebody before?
Well, I would take them, the first thing I would do is do an assessment with them.
Hmm.
Where are you at now, and why do you think that you are where you are? And then kind of take them through, well, where do you want to be, and how do you think that you're going to get there, and why haven't you done that up until this point? And so it's really, I like to say that I'm not a speaker or a peak performance coach.
Hmm.
I like to say I'm a human potential extractor.
Squeeze that juice out.
I just really uncover the things that are already there. And yeah, sometimes I have to do it with my clients kicking and screaming,
Yeah.
but eventually I just uncover what was already in them. They just didn't know it.
Yes. They just never bothered to, I guess, look in that mirror and realize their own potential, did they?
Yeah, and sometimes it may be rearranging their dogs, or sometimes it may be exercising that quote unquote mental toughness muscle. It really is person to person, but I just help them realize that you really can go from point A to point B. Um, and you really can do, be, and have everything that you want in life. You just have to do, be, and have the work ethic to do it.
Do you think if you've not performed as a leader and you're in an organization, they've come to see you, do you think that that leader who is underperforming can reassess and reset their own mindset and achieve a level of leadership that people will follow?
I do.
Hmm.
And if I didn't, I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing right now.
Hmm.
I
Hmm.
do believe that you can change, because I've seen it before. I've
Hmm.
seen it before. And the other thing, you don't have to have a title to be a leader either. So I've seen some people emerge as fantastic leaders who didn't have a title.
Hmm.
And so I really do believe that.
It's one of those things I often think, you see that the silent heroes of the world who don't have that leadership position, they often rise to the top, don't they?
Yep,
You
they
know,
do.
they've got no real story to tell, but they're just grinding away in the background, doing what they can do to help others. And I think that comes to the very next point in the conversation is about helping others. Now, with a leadership role and speaking, how important do you think it is for leadership professionals to actually use story in businesses? And is that something you promote to them?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. The whole story phenomenon has really come on board in the last few years. And I think within all of us, within our own humanness,
Hmm.
we want to be moved.
Yeah.
We want to hear the stories about the underdog winning, and we want to hear about the stories about overcoming, you know, the David, overcoming the Goliath. I think that there's a part in us, even if we act like we don't want or need it, I think that we all do. And so using stories is a great way to reveal those attaboy moments. So usually when I end a keynote, I usually try to end it on a positive note.
Hmm.
And so I usually like to share with my audience, if they remember nothing else about the time that we shared today, I hope that they remember these three things. Number one, you are not what happens to you in life. It is an event. It is not a definition, and it certainly isn't a label. And the second is, you can't control sometimes what happens to you in life, like in our current situation,
Hmm.
but you can always control your attitude about it. And I love how Scotty Hamilton says it. He says the only true and real disability in life is a bad attitude. And
Absolutely.
the third thing is never quit, like ever. You can divert your energies, but don't ever quit, because you will never realize and become the person that you want to be, or the best version of yourself, if you quit. And so I try to share those things with my audience and encourage them, because we all have stuff, Rick, right? We all
Yes,
do.
absolutely.
And so I try to those three things are super important to me. And I hope that they would help anybody who's listening to me.
Oh, Val, that's just wonderful insight and feedback. I can tell you're a wonderful spirit. Thank you so very much for sharing everything that you've done with the My Future Business audience today. I know they're going to get a lot of value. So thanks again for spending some time with me on the My Future Business show today.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thanks for joining us today. If you enjoyed the call, then make sure to subscribe, leave a comment, share us with your friends, and book your spot on the show at myfuturebusiness.com/interviews. And if you're looking for solutions that will help grow your business, then visit myfuturebusiness.com/shop.